The night was cold on the alien world. In the great hall of the council, the people stood in silence. At the center of the room, a small child trembled. She was only 5 years old. Yet she was accused of a crime too heavy for her tiny shoulders. The elders' voices filled the air. They spoke of stolen knowledge, of forbidden secrets taken from the sacred archives. The punishment was already decided. There would be no trial. The law of this planet was strict and merciless. Those who touched forbidden things must be blinded, so they could never see temptation again. The child cried out. She said she was innocent. Her small voice echoed, but no one listened. Her family lowered their heads. Afraid of the council's anger, her mother wept quietly, but she did not move forward to protect her daughter. The father looked away, his heart broken, but his fear stronger than his love. The guards held the child down. She screamed, but her cries were ignored. A machine of light hovered above her eyes. One flash, and the world went black for her forever. Darkness swallowed the child's life, and she collapsed to the ground. The hall remained silent. The elders announced that she was guilty. From that day forward, she would carry her punishment. She would live in blindness, and the mark of shame would follow her forever. Her people would look at her not with kindness, but with fear and disgust. Years passed, the little girl grew, but her life remained full of pain. She could no longer run through the gardens as she once did. She could no longer see the sky or the colors of the forest. Her friends abandoned her, whispering that she was cursed. Children threw stones at her, calling her a thief. Even the old avoided her. Believing her blindness was justice, she lived in a small corner of the village. Her days were filled with silence. She learned to walk carefully, with her hands searching the walls and the ground. She learned to hear the sound of the wind, the steps of people, the whispers behind her back. But in her heart she carried a fire. She knew she was innocent. She knew someone had framed her. But who would believe the words of a blind criminal child? Each night she sat alone and waited. Sometimes she prayed to the stars she could no longer see. She prayed that one day someone would come, someone who would listen to her truth, someone who would give her back the light she had lost. But the years kept passing, 1 year, then 5 years, then 10. No one came. Her hope began to fade. She grew into a young woman, silent and broken. Her eyes, once bright, were now empty, white and scarred. She moved like a shadow, unseen, unwanted, forgotten. Yet deep inside, a small voice whispered, "This is not the end. Your story is not finished. The punishment was cruel. But the truth will not stay hidden forever. One day the light will return, and then..." On the 15th year of her blindness, her life changed. Rumors spread in the village. A human traveler had landed on their planet, the first human to visit in decades. The people warned each other, saying humans were dangerous, clever and untrustworthy. But the girl, sitting in her darkness, felt her heart beat faster. She did not know why. She could not explain the feeling, but something inside her whispered that her waiting was finally over. For 15 years she lived in shadows. For 15 years she carried the weight of a crime she did not commit. And now destiny was moving again. Her story was only beginning. The human ship broke through the clouds like a silver arrow. Its engines roared as it landed outside the alien village. For the people, it was a day of fear. They had not seen a human for many years. They whispered among themselves that humans were trouble. They said humans brought change, and change was always dangerous. The traveler stepped out. He wore no armor, carried no weapon, only a pack on his back and tools at his side. His name was Elias. He was an engineer, a healer of machines and sometimes of people. He had traveled across many worlds, but he had never seen a place as silent and watchful as this one. The villagers gathered, keeping their distance. They stared with suspicion, their eyes sharp and cold. Children hid behind their parents. Old ones shook their heads, but Elias only smiled. He bowed respectfully. Speaking in a calm voice, "I come in peace," he said. "I seek knowledge, and perhaps a little trade." The council gave him permission to stay, but with warning. They told him humans were not trusted here. He could walk in the markets, he could rest in the inn, but he must never break their laws, Elias agreed, though in his heart he wondered what these strict laws were. For days he walked the village, he studied their tools, their strange crystals, their way of life. He helped a farmer fix a broken water pump. He mended a child's toy that no one else could repair. Some began to smile at him, but most still kept their distance. And in every corner he heard the same whispers, the same story. a cursed blind girl, punished for stealing knowledge. A child who grew up in shame and shadows. Elias was curious one evening. In the quiet of the tavern, he asked the innkeeper, "Who is this girl you whisper about?" The innkeeper frowned and lowered his voice. "Do not ask of her," he warned. "She is a criminal marked forever, blinded for her sins." But Elias did not stop thinking about her. The story felt wrong to him. Too heavy, too cruel for a child. The next day, walking through the narrow streets, Elias saw her. She sat alone near a broken wall. Her hair tangled, her clothes worn. Her white, scarred eyes stared into nothing, yet her face was calm. Too calm for someone so young. Elias stopped. Something in his heart ached. He stepped closer and softly said, "Hello." The girl turned her head. Surprised, most people ignored her. Few dared to speak. Her voice was soft when she replied, "Why do you talk to me, stranger?" "Because I want to," Elias said gently. "Because I do not believe you are cursed." Her lips trembled. No one had ever spoken to her like this. For 15 years she had lived in silence. Mocked, feared, forgotten, now a human. A stranger from the stars. Spoke to her as if she mattered. They talked for a while. She told him her name, Leora. She asked what Earth was like. He described oceans of blue, forests of green, cities full of light. Her face lifted as she imagined them. Though she could not see for the first time in many years, she laughed, a small laugh but filled with life. Elias began to visit her in secret. He brought small things for her hands to feel. A smooth stone, a tiny gear, a piece of glass that caught the sun. She listened to his stories of human worlds. He listened to her stories of loneliness. Slowly a bond grew between them, not of pity but of trust. But Elias also carried a secret. He had seen her damaged eyes, and in his heart he knew something. He could help her. He had studied both human and alien science. He had repaired machines that others thought dead, and deep inside he believed he could give her vision again. Yet the danger was great. He remembered the council's warning. Never break their laws, and their laws were clear. The punishment of blindness could never be undone. Anyone who tried would face death. Still, Elias could not turn away. Every time he saw Leora smile, every time he heard her laugh despite her darkness, his resolve grew stronger. He told himself, "I must try, even if the galaxy called it a crime, even if it cost him his life." That night, in the shadows of his small room, Elias opened his pack. Inside were tools, wires, tiny crystals, and strange circuits. He placed them carefully on the table, and he whispered to himself, "This will be the beginning," unseen by the village. Unknown to the council, the human had made his choice. He would build for Leora a new vision, a gift forbidden by law, a gift that could change everything. Elias worked at night. By day, he walked among the villagers, fixing their tools and smiling politely. But when darkness came, he returned to his small room. There, under dim light, he shaped wires, crystals, and tiny lenses. Every click of metal, every spark of light carried a secret. For what he was building could change one life forever. Leora did not know what he was planning. She only knew that the human kept visiting her. Every day he brought something new, a story, a small object, a piece of earth she could touch. She ran her fingers over the gears, the smooth glass, the strange little chips. To her they were mysteries, but they gave her comfort. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. For the first time, she felt like a person, not a curse. One evening, Elias sat beside her on the broken wall. The moonlight touched her face. Though she could not see it, he asked softly, "Leora, do you ever dream of seeing again?" She was quiet for a long time. Her hands trembled, and then she whispered, "Every night," her voice cracked. "I dream of colors, though I cannot remember them anymore. I dream of stars, though I have never seen them. I dream of my mother's face, the way it used to smile before she turned away." Elias's heart tightened. He wanted to tell her then and there that he was building a miracle for her. But he knew the danger. The walls of the village had ears, and even shadows could carry whispers. Instead, he said, "One day you will see again. I promise," she laughed sadly, shaking her head. "Promises are dangerous here." "Elias," she replied, "do not give me hope, if hope will only be taken away." But deep inside, his words planted a seed, a fragile seed of faith she thought she had lost. The days passed, and their bond grew stronger. They shared secrets, stories, and even silences that felt safe. Elias taught her to understand machines by touch, He guided her hands over the shapes of gears and circuits. He explained how energy flowed, how light could be captured and bent. She listened with wonder. Her blind eyes shining with curiosity, she said softly, "If I cannot see, maybe I can still understand." And Elias smiled, because her spirit was stronger than he had ever imagined. But not everyone was blind to their closeness. The villagers began to whisper again. They said the human was foolish to speak with her. They said the cursed girl was dangerous. Some warned Elias directly, "Stay away from her, human, or you will share her fate." But Elias did not listen. He could not turn his back on her now, at night. The device in his room grew piece by piece. 2 small lenses of crystal carved with care, wires thin as hair, glowing faintly when energy passed. A frame that could fit against her temples like a crown. It was not only a machine, it was hope made real. Hope forged by human hands one night when the stars were hidden behind clouds. Elias brought Leora to his room. He whispered, "Be quiet. No one must know." She followed the sound of his voice, trusting him completely. He placed her hands on the half-finished device. She traced the smooth glass, the sharp edges of metal, the warmth of tiny circuits. Her breath caught. "What is this?" Elias looked into her blind eyes and said, "This is the beginning of your vision." She froze. Trembling for a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice shook. "You cannot. The law forbids it. They will kill you." "I know," Elias said calmly, "but I cannot stand by and let you live in darkness." Her heart raced. Torn between fear and impossible hope, she whispered, "Why would you risk everything for me?" And he answered simply, "Because you deserve to see the stars, that night." She cried for the first time in years, not from pain, but from the weight of kindness she had never known. Her tears fell onto the machine, shining like tiny jewels. Elias held her shoulders and said, "We must keep this secret. No one can know." "Not yet." And she nodded, though fear gripped her chest. She had been punished once for something she did not do, and now she was guilty of something even greater. From that night forward, their bond was sealed. Each day they pretended to be strangers, but each night in the shadows they worked together. Leora learned to listen to the hum of circuits, to feel the pulse of light trapped inside crystals. Elias guided her hands, proud of her courage. Together, they built something forbidden, something beautiful. But outside their secret world, danger grew. The villagers' whispers turned sharp. The council began to watch Elias more closely, and one old man swore he saw the cursed girl smile again. He whispered, "Something is happening." And rumors spread like fire in the wind. Yet in the quiet of his room, Elias whispered to Leora, "Do not be afraid. We are close." And though her heart trembled, she whispered back, "For the first time, I am not afraid." Unseen by the world, in the shadows of fear and law, a human and an alien child had built something greater than friendship. They had built a secret bond, and that bond was about to change everything. The nights grew longer. In the small room where Elias worked, the air smelled of metal and burning wires. Every evening, Leora sat beside him, her hands touching the table. She could not see the shapes, but she felt every piece, every curve of the device. Her fingers learned the rhythm of construction, the hum of circuits, the warmth of crystal. Elias guided her gently, teaching her what no one else dared to teach. "This machine," Elias whispered, "will give you back the light." Her breath caught, her heart racing. She had dreamed of this moment, but now it was real, too real. Her voice trembled. "If the council finds out, they will kill you." Elias only smiled faintly. Some things are worth the risk, but the law was not just cruel. It was absolute on this world. Punishment was sacred. To reverse a punishment was to insult the council. To challenge the gods, even speaking of it, was forbidden. And now, in the shadows, a human was daring to break it. He was not only repairing her eyes, he was defying an entire civilization. Leora felt both fear and hope burning inside her. She asked him one night, "Why me, Elias? Why do you care?" He looked at her scarred eyes, at her trembling hands. "Because no child deserves what was done to you," he answered softly. "Because 15 years of darkness is enough." His words broke the walls around her heart. No one had ever spoken to her with such certainty. The device neared completion. It was shaped like a crown, with lenses of crystal shining faintly blue. Tiny veins of metal spread across its frame, glowing softly with life. It was not alien, not human, but a mixture of both, something new, something forbidden. Leora ran her fingers over it, shivering. "It feels alive," she whispered. Elias nodded. It is more than metal. It is a chance, but danger pressed closer. The villagers had grown suspicious. They noticed the human disappeared at night. They noticed the cursed girl seemed different. An elder muttered, "Her face has changed. There is hope in her smile." And they feared hope more than curses. One evening, as Elias worked, the door shook. He quickly covered the device with a cloth. A villager stepped inside, pretending to ask about a broken tool. But his eyes scanned the room, searching. Elias handed him the tool and smiled calmly. When the man left, Leora whispered in fear. "They are watching us." Elias placed a hand on hers. "Steady and firm. Then we must finish faster," he said. Each night they worked harder. Leora's hands grew skilled. She learned to listen to the smallest vibration. She could tell when a circuit was alive. When a crystal was unstable, she was blind. Yet her senses had sharpened in ways Elias admired. "Your blindness has made you strong," he told her. "And now your strength will meet the light." But as the final days approached, Leora's heart grew heavy. "What if it does not work?" she whispered one night. "What if I open my eyes, and there is still only darkness?" Elias looked at her gently. "Then I will try again," he said, "and again, until the stars themselves grow tired." She smiled faintly, her heart warmed by his stubborn faith. At last the device was complete. It shone like a jewel in the candlelight, a crown of science, of defiance, of hope. Leora touched it and felt its pulse. It was as if the machine itself was alive, waiting for her that night. Elias told her the truth. "Leora, if this works, your life will change. You will see again. But the council will know. They will come for me, and perhaps for you." Her hands shook. Her breath shallow, she asked, "Then why do it, Elias? Why give me a gift that could destroy us both?" His voice was steady, filled with quiet fire. "Because living in fear is no life at all. Because sometimes breaking a law is the only way to find justice." She held the crown close to her chest, her tears falling on the cold metal. For 15 years she had lived in shadows. Now she stood at the edge of a miracle. Her heart whispered yes, but her mind screamed no. Between fear and hope, she trembled, and Elias, watching her, knew that the moment of truth was near. Outside, the wind carried the whispers of the village. The council's eyes grew sharper. The people's fear turned into suspicion, and in the silence of the night a storm of fate was gathering. But in the small hidden room, away from their judging eyes, a human and a broken child had built something impossible. Not just a machine, but a chance to change destiny. The forbidden science was ready, and soon it would either save her or destroy them both. The night was silent. The stars hid behind heavy clouds, as if even the sky feared what was about to happen. Inside the small room, the crown of crystal and metal rested on the table. Glowing faintly blue, Leora sat trembling, her fingers brushing the edge of the device. Elias stood before her, calm on the outside, but inside his heart pounded like a storm. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Her breath shook, her voice a whisper. "I have waited 15 years for this moment." Her hands gripped the edge of the table. "But Elias, what if it fails?" He leaned closer, his eyes steady. "Then we will try again." She nodded slowly, a tear sliding down her cheek. For so long, she had lived in endless darkness, and now the chance of light stood before her. Elias lifted the device, careful as if holding life itself. He placed it gently against her temples. Adjusting the frame, the crystals glowed brighter. The wires hummed softly. Leora shivered. "It feels warm." "That means it's alive," Elias said. He pressed his hand on the activation switch. "Close your eyes," he whispered. Though she had never truly opened them, the device hummed louder. A faint spark of energy moved across the crown. The crystals pulsed like beating hearts. Inside her mind something stirred. A flash, a spark. A crack of light she had not felt in years. Her breath caught, her body froze. "Elias," she gasped. Something is happening. "Don't be afraid," he urged. "Tell me what you feel." I see shadows," she whispered, her voice shaking. Not clear, not full, but shadows moving in the dark. Her hands gripped the chair as tears spilled. "I thought I had forgotten what light was," she sobbed. "But it's here, Elias, it's here." The machine glowed brighter. Her blind eyes, once dull and empty, now shimmered faintly with blue light. Shapes began to form in her mind. The blur of a table. The shadow of Elias standing close. She raised her hand slowly, staring or trying to stare at her own fingers. "I can see it," she whispered in awe. "My hand." I can see my hand. Elias felt his chest tighten with joy. He knelt before her, smiling. Leora, it works. Her tears came faster, her shoulders shaking. For 15 years, she had walked in nothing but darkness. Now the world was returning. One blurred shape at a time, she turned her head toward him, her eyes glowing softly with the machine's light. For the first time she saw the faint outline of his face. Not clear, not perfect, but enough to make her heart leap. That's you, she gasped. Elias, I can see you. He laughed softly, though his own eyes grew wet. Yes, it's me, he whispered. I told you. One day you would see again. She reached out, her trembling hand touching his cheek. Now her eyes followed her own hand and she cried harder. The simple act of touching and seeing at once broke her heart with joy. Thank you, she whispered. You gave me back the stars, but joy could not last forever. Outside, a noise stirred, voices rising in the distance. Elias stiffened, his smile fading. The villagers had noticed the strange light escaping from the cracks of the door. They murmured, "The human is doing something forbidden." One child shouted. I saw the cursed girl's eyes glowing. The whispers turned to fear, and fear turned to anger. Elias quickly dimmed the machine. Leora, listen to me, he said sharply. Do not tell anyone yet. Not even a friend, she nodded, wiping her tears, though her heart burned with both joy and fear. But Elias, she whispered, how long can we hide this? He placed a hand on her shoulder. As long as we must. That night, she walked through the village streets for the first time with half-formed vision. The torches were blurs of golden fire. The shadows of houses loomed tall. The moon shone through the clouds, pale and silver. Her heart soared, every blurred shape more beautiful than perfection itself. She smiled, and the villagers gasped in shock. Some whispered, she smiles. Why does she smile? Others hissed, her curse is changing. Elias kept her close, guiding her away. He knew the council would hear of this soon. He knew their eyes would turn toward him, but when he looked at Leora, who now lifted her face to the stars she could barely see, he felt no regret, for he had given her what no law could allow, hope. The awakening was complete, but it was also the beginning of danger. The council would not forgive such defiance. The villagers would not accept such a miracle. And Leora, though reborn in light, now carried a heavier burden. Her sight had returned, but at a price not yet revealed. Elias whispered to her as they walked in the shadows. Stay strong, Leora. This is only the beginning. And in her glowing eyes, blurred but alive, she whispered back, I'm not afraid anymore. But above them, the night itself seemed to whisper, the law is coming. The council is watching, and soon the gift of light would call down the storm. The morning sun rose over the alien village. But for Elias and Leora, the light felt heavy. What had been joy in the night now turned into fear. The villagers had seen the glow in her eyes. Whispers spread faster than fire in dry grass. By noon, everyone was speaking of the cursed girl who smiled again. The council summoned them. The great hall was filled with cold silence. Elders in long robes sat high upon stone seats, their eyes sharp, their voices like blades. Elias stood tall, though his heart pounded. Leora stood beside him, trembling, yet holding her head high. Human, one elder thundered, you were welcomed to our world with peace, but you have broken our law. You dared to undo punishment placed by the council itself. Elias did not bow. He did not deny it. I did what was right, he answered firmly. She was only a child when you blinded her. She was innocent. Gasps filled the hall. The villagers muttered in shock. No one had ever spoken to the council like that. The elders' eyes narrowed with fury. Innocent or not, the punishment was law, they declared, and you, human, have insulted that law with forbidden science. Leora's hands clenched at her sides. Her voice, soft but clear, rose above the whispers. I was innocent, she cried. I was only 5 years old. I did not steal from the archives. The hall fell silent. For 15 years she had been silent. For 15 years she had carried her shame quietly. Now with her new sight she found her voice. You blinded me for a crime I did not commit, she shouted. You let me grow in darkness, hated by all, while the true thief walked free. Her glowing eyes met the council's gaze. For the first time the people saw her not as a curse, but as a victim. The elders frowned, shifting uncomfortably, but they would not admit fault. Words are wind, one elder said coldly. Do you have proof, blind girl? Her lips trembled. But then Elias stepped forward. She does, he said firmly, because now she can see what others ignored. The council grew restless. Explain, they demanded. Elias turned to Leora, nodding. Tell them what you remember, he whispered. She closed her eyes, remembering that night 15 years ago. The sound of the archives, the footsteps, the voice she had heard before the guards came. Her eyes snapped open, glowing with faint light. I remember the one who framed me, she said, her voice steady. Gasps spread across the hall as she pointed toward the crowd. Her hand shook, but her voice was strong. It was him, she cried. A figure stepped back in shock. An older man now, once young, now respected. He paled as eyes turned toward him. He was there, Leora continued. He stole the knowledge and placed the blame on me. The hall erupted into chaos. Voices shouted, some in disbelief, some in anger. The man stammered, lies, all lies, but Elias stepped forward, holding out a crystal recording device. One he had found in the archives after weeks of secret searching. It glowed, projecting a faint image. The shadow of the man entering the forbidden chamber long ago. Gasps filled the hall once more. The council stared, trapped by truth. They could no longer deny her innocence, but their faces twisted with rage. Not at the guilty man, but at the human who revealed it. You broke our law, the eldest thundered. You dared to undo our judgment even if she was innocent. You defied the council. The villagers stirred uneasily. Some shouted, she was innocent. Set her free, others whispered. The human is dangerous. He broke the sacred rules. The hall was divided. Fear and anger clashing in the air. Leora stepped forward, her voice trembling yet strong. You call it law, but it was never justice, she said. You blinded a child without proof, and you call that sacred. Tears filled her eyes, not of weakness but of fire. For 15 years I lived in darkness because of your pride, but now I can see, and I will not be silent again. The elders' faces darkened. One shouted, enough! Another thundered. The girl may be cleared, but the human must pay. Guards stepped forward. Heavy boots echoing, they moved toward Elias. Chains in their hands, Leora cried out, no, you cannot take him. But Elias lifted his hand. Calm and steady. Do not be afraid, he told her. I knew this was coming. The guards seized him. Dragging him to his knees, the council declared, for breaking the highest law, the human shall face punishment. The villagers gasped, some with anger, some with sorrow. Leora fell to her knees beside him, her tears falling. Please, she begged. He gave me back the stars, do not take him away. But the council's eyes were cold. The judgment had been spoken. The human who gave light would now be thrown into darkness himself. The hall shook with cries, with fury, with fear. The people were no longer certain who was right, but one thing was clear. The story of a blind child and a human stranger was no longer just a secret. It was a storm that threatened the very heart of the council's power. The council chamber echoed with the sound of chains. Elias knelt on the stone floor, his wrists bound. Leora stood beside him, her glowing eyes filled with tears. The elders had spoken. The human would pay with his life. The villagers watched in silence, torn between fear and sympathy, but the truth, once revealed, does not stay buried. The guilty man, the one Leora had pointed to, tried to slip away, his face pale, his steps hurried. But the people stopped him, blocking his path. Why do you run if you are innocent? One shouted. The man's lips trembled, sweat pouring down his face. At last his voice cracked. Yes, it was me, he cried. I was young, foolish. I thought no one would ever know. Gasps filled the chamber. The people turned to the council, their anger rising. You blinded a child for his crime, they shouted. You let her suffer for 15 years while the true thief lived free. The elders shifted uneasily, their power shaken, but still they tried to hold their ground. The law was followed, one snapped. The punishment was sacred. We cannot change what has been done. Leora stepped forward, her voice steady though her body shook. No, she said firmly. Law without truth is not sacred. It is cruelty, she turned, her glowing eyes sweeping across the crowd. For 15 years, I lived in darkness because of their pride. But one human gave me back my sight. And with it I gave you the truth, the villagers murmured, their whispers growing louder. They looked at Elias, bound in chains, and then at the council. They saw fear in the elders' eyes for the first time. The people realized the council was not unshakable. The truth had cracked their walls. A bold voice rose from the crowd. Free the human, a villager shouted. Another joined. He did what you could not. He gave justice. Soon the chamber thundered with voices. Free him, they cried. The council slammed their staffs, demanding silence. But the people would not be silent anymore. Elias lifted his head, his calm voice carrying through the storm. If you must punish someone, punish me, he said. But do not punish her again. She deserves her life back. His words only fueled the fire. The villagers roared louder, and the guilty man, trembling, fell to his knees, begging for mercy. The council's faces grew pale. They had ruled for centuries with fear. But now fear had turned against them. At last the eldest elder rose, his voice heavy. The human has broken our law, yet he has revealed truth. The girl was innocent. Her punishment unjust, he paused, the weight of the crowd pressing on him. We release them both. The chains fell from Elias's wrists. Leora rushed to him, tears of relief streaming down her face. The villagers erupted in cheers, some weeping openly for the first time. They looked at her not with fear, but with respect. Her curse was broken not by law but by truth and courage. The guilty man was led away in disgrace. The council bowed their heads, weakened. The power they once held seemed smaller now, and in the center of it all stood Leora, her eyes glowing softly with new vision, the symbol of both suffering and hope. She turned to Elias, her voice trembling with gratitude. You gave me back more than sight, she whispered. You gave me back my life, he smiled faintly, his hand resting on her shoulder. No, Leora, he said gently. You gave yourself back your life, I only gave you the chance. The people gathered around them. Children who once threw stones now reached out to touch her hands. Mothers bowed their heads in shame and respect. Even her own parents stepped forward, tears in their eyes. We failed you. Her mother wept. We turned away when you needed us most. Can you forgive us? Leora's heart ached, but she whispered, yes, for she had carried hatred long enough. That night, for the first time in 15 years, she looked at the stars, not as dreams, not as whispers, but with her own eyes she gasped at their beauty. The endless sky filled with light, and Elias stood beside her, smiling. Now you see what I meant, he said softly. She nodded, her eyes shining with tears. They are more beautiful than I ever imagined. The story of the blind child and the human spread across worlds. It was told in whispers, in songs, in quiet prayers of hope, for it was not only a story of science but of courage, a story of one human who defied the law for justice, and one child who carried darkness until the truth gave her light. In the end, the council's law had not forgiven her, but the stars had, and that was enough.